to do for you. Think about what you will give the people that you do meet, not what you will get from them. Believe in yourself. Believe that you are a generous person who offers from her heart and that you have something to offer, that you believe in it. So if you believe in it, talk to everybody, and the ones who do are getting the recruits. If not, they didn't pay attention to any of those fears. They just like what they do, and they're out telling people about it. So now I'm going to turn this over to Corey, and she's going to take it from there because she's got a couple sharing points. Corey?
Thank you, Phyllis. I guess in listening to Phyllis, I was really inspired by the information she shared, because the two important things when it comes to having your own business is that, you got to really have that compelling why and overcoming your fears. And once you kind of mastered those two things, it's time to begin to really learn how to share what you love. Now, there are three things in doing that. One of the things is, as Phyllis said, is to develop a new perspective in these tried and true methods that I'm about to talk about. Now, the first one is ask everyone. We've talked about that before. When you're asking everyone, you need to develop the attitude of being an equal opportunity asker. The benefits of that is that you're not prejudging, and you don't have to think of who might be interested or who might not be. When you ask everyone, you don't have to think about that. It really makes it easier to do the act. Now, one thing you might want to do is create a who do you know list. Now, when you run out of people from that who do you know list, the next thing to do is to circulate and cultivate. What does that mean? Well, go to different places to meet a diversity of people. And those new people you meet can be added into who do you know list. Now, here's a hint in circulating and cultivating. Incorporate this into your daily life, when you're doing your errands, when you're going to the dry cleaners and you're waiting for the cleaning guy to kind of help you. Strike a conversation with the person next to you. Instead of going through the drive-thru in that fast food restaurant, go inside, fall in line, and strike up a conversation with the person next to you. That is how you can incorporate that act into your daily life. And when you're feeling kind of nervous or apprehensive about, getting out there and asking everyone, dare yourself to do it. You can say, you know what? I dare myself to do this. It's either getting out there, picking up that phone, or getting in my car, or doing a household chore that I don't really want to do. You know what? Chances are that you're going to pick up that phone and have a lively conversation with someone you know, or get out of that car and, go someplace and meet new people. When you ask, don't think of it as recruiting, but think of it as a friend-finding quest. Because face it, making friends, it's much more fun. And as Phyllis said earlier, recruiting is about having the right attitude. Now, here's a hint. I mentioned, the idea of prejudging. We've talked in this business about how, not to prejudge. Well, here's a prime example of my own personal experience. Years ago, I had a small business. I did custom tailored women's suits. And, to find new clients, I often tried going to mixers and things like that. And I was introduced to this really nice lady. She was very nice when I told her what I did. She was very interested and actually very forthcoming in her interest. But I prejudged because my suits ran about $800 on average. I tended to prejudge people to see if they could afford it or not. Big mistake on my part. In talking to her, I didn't even bother to get her information, and I didn't even bother to give her my card because I just didn't think she could afford what I had to offer. Later on, I realized that she was a very successful real estate agent who could have really used my products and my services. Or if not, she probably could have referred me to some people she knows. So what is the lesson learned in that faux pas I had of prejudging? You lose the contact and you've lost the sale when you automatically prejudge someone as not being able to afford or not being a good fit into your business. when you prejudge, you immediately develop an attitude that dictates the way you're going to act towards that person. And, and a lot of times when you prejudge, you think, oh, this person is a waste of time. But you know what? No one is a waste of time. It might not be the right time for them, but they're not a waste of time. Because if you actually take the time to just talk to them a little bit and get their information, you've got that contact in your database. Remember that telephone conference we had where the title was, Have You Tried This? And we talked about the value of follow-up, about how most yeses come after the fifth contact. That person that I prejudged could have eventually been a yes after a few contacts. Now, the second thing to do in sharing what you love is don't care about the outcome. Now, Phyllis talked about earlier about that dreaded no word, because asking can be hard because of that word no. We tend to feel hurt, disappointed, discouraged when we hear that word. Excuse me. We also associate it with failure. But ladies, let me tell you something about failure. And you've probably heard this. Most successful people have failed more times than the average person. But what did they do different? They made the numbers work for them. Remember when Phyllis said that sales is a numbers game? Okay, successful people probably heard no more times than everybody you know. But they found success in the numbers game. They heard no more times, but you know what? They also heard yes. Because where there's a no, there's going to be a yes. So remember, develop a new perspective on the word no, because sometimes maybe they just need to know more information or it's not the right time for them. And here's a little hint, too, in learning a little bit more about yourself and interacting with people and the word no. When somebody tells you no, immediately become conscious of how you feel when you hear that word. Did your heart jump a bit? How did you emotionally feel when you hear that word? Then try to condition yourself to feel the opposite. You need to learn from the negative experience of hearing that no and try and turn it into a positive. That is one way that you can overcome your fear. Now, the third thing to do in sharing what you love is the obvious, and it's something we talked about before and we talk about all the time, is to be a good listener. There's so much value in really embracing that strategy and state of being, because listening gives you the information so you can give the other person what they need. When you know more about the other person, it makes you a better communicator, right? Listening is also an emotional experience. You can't just hear the words, but you've kind of got to absorb what the other person is telling you. When you listen, you care what the other person is talking about. When you're truly listening, that is. The interaction is no longer about you, but about the other person and the interaction between the two of you. It's a great way to build relationships. So obviously it's a great way to know the person. And knowing the person makes follow-up that more natural. You're not so hesitant to give them a call or send them an email or even send them a card because, when you feel like you've developed a little bit of a rapport with somebody, it's natural to stay connected with them. And it's being a good listener can also be a satisfying experience. It can really make you a better person. Why? Because you learn to appreciate the value of others and you begin to see their qualities. Now, here's a great hint in becoming a better listener. Visualize what the other is telling you. It helps you remembering their stories. Now, so you're probably thinking, okay, Corey's talked about these three things, but how do I integrate that? How do I integrate asking everyone, not caring about the word no, and being a good listener? Well, the answer really is employ the ideas that Phyllis talked about in developing your why and overcoming your fears. A new attitude and a new perspective can really help you grow as an individual and as a professional. Because when you remember your why, helps you develop more emotion when you're talking to other people. It kind of adds that warm fuzzy as well. So, because these telephone conferences are always about recruiting, remember what's always said with our distributors: work smarter, not harder. That is the value of recruiting. That is what recruiting will do for your business. And do you remember last week's telephone conference where the title was "Don't Let Life Interfere